холодно, как тут расслабился. Опа, опа, опачки, опаньки, опачки, опаньки. Что-то маловато, что-то как-то. Okay.
Привет, красавчик. И кто у тебя на это?
Вот так. Неправда, не верю. Ну, я понял.
Welcome to this piano pandemic activities video where we're going through Rachmaninoff's Prelude in B minor, Opus 32 number 10. We've already looked at some early considerations, some external, extra musical things, and some general considerations. The first section. And of course, it goes like this. Okay, so notice the melody is in the top, and using his system of marking. Now he does double it at the octave.
What's up? Yeah, dude. Fuck is happening? You got the cover out there? Get back. Hey, we got a sniper. Dude, you got shot.
I did get shot.
I saw it hit your Kevlar.
I got fucking. What the
Fuck, man. Am I good? My ears are fucking.
Oh my god.
Lucky son of a bitch. Look at that. What the fuck? Dude, you alright?
Yeah. My ears are ringing.
Break. My teammate just got shot in the helmet.
He's good.
He's good, but we believe there's a sniper.
Hey, what is that? That's the south side? Roger, all stations. We got a sniper on the south side of the compound with all of the drugs.
Motherfuck, dude. That's through.
All right, let's get out here and do something about this. Come on.
Thanks for checking out GuitarTricks.com recently. We're running a special right now that's really cool. This is the best time to
Tonight, the election cliffhanger as we come on the air. The presidential race still undecided. Millions of votes still being counted. But just in the last few hours, two major flips for Joe Biden. NBC News projecting him the winner in Michigan and apparent winner in Wisconsin. Two crucial pieces of that blue wall he's trying to build. But the legal battle already underway. Donald Trump's campaign suing to stop the counts in Michigan and Pennsylvania and demanding a recount in Wisconsin. The president threatening to go all the way to the Supreme Court. Biden with the lead in the Electoral College, the president taking key battlegrounds, overperforming with Latinos in Florida. Both candidates still with pathways to 270, but with the race still up in the air, the president prematurely and falsely declaring himself the winner. Biden expressing confidence, saying when all the votes are counted, he will be the clear winner. And after a record surge of mail-in voting, a federal judge demanding to know why the Postal Service did not comply with his order to sweep processing facilities for undelivered ballots. Our team in all the battleground states, the states still in play tonight with razor-thin margins in this nail-biter of an election.
This is NBC Nightly News. Decision 2020. Here is Lester Holt.
Good evening. The road to 270 electoral votes is potentially a narrowing path for President Trump tonight. Two more big battleground states placed into the Joe Biden column today. NBC News now projecting the former VP will be the presidential winner in Michigan and apparent winner in a razor-tight race in Wisconsin. But tonight, 6 other states are keeping this race very much alive. And that's where we start with our whole team in place to cover it all. And let's say hello to Chuck Todd right now. Chuck, map it out for us.
Well, look, let's just talk about where we're headed to just the basic path to 270. You laid it out. Joe Biden has the fastest path to 270, the simplest one. He's leading in Arizona right now, and he's leading in Nevada. And if he holds on to both of those, he is right at the number. He doesn't need any of these 3 East Coast states. But let me show you the president's path and why it's so precarious. He's leading in Georgia right now. He's leading in North Carolina right now. So not only would he need Pennsylvania, where he's leading right now, he'd need someplace else. It would have to be, Alaska wouldn't give it to him. here, which he's likely to get. He needs 2 more electoral votes somewhere. It's got to come from Nevada or Arizona. So this is where Nevada and Arizona, if they both go Biden, it ends up being a checkmate there. But we do have a little bit more to go. Georgia, just because the president is leading right now, I want to show you, is a 58,000 vote gap here. We think there's 300,000 out. Essentially, if it's in blue territory, which we think it is, and Biden wins it 2-1, this race is going to end up in essentially a tie. Someone's going to win it, but we're talking margin of error stuff. Now, same thing that we're seeing in Pennsylvania. We're going to sit here for quite some time with Pennsylvania. Again, there's 265,000 votes, but when you look at what's out, there's still 1 million votes out. And it's a whole bunch of them in southeast Pennsylvania.
All right, Chuck, and so are those coming from places where they believe they will find a lot of Democratic votes?
Well, not only is it going to be places in southeast Pennsylvania, traditional Democratic territory right now, but it's the mail-in votes. And we know that in the mail, those have been predominantly Democrats.
All right, Chuck Todd, thanks very much. Let's go right to Michigan for more on Biden's projected victory there. NBC's Steve Patterson is in Detroit. Steve, tell us what's happening there.
Lester, as Biden was being declared a projected winner, chaos broke out here in downtown Detroit.
Just wait a minute.
This is where a historic number of absentee ballots are being counted in this city. A crush of protesters, some claiming to be poll examiners, trying to balance the number of nonpartisan and certified party watchers observing the polls. The group chanting, at times, "Stop the vote," banging on the glass into the wall, while others were pushed back by guards trying to force their way in. The remaining votes yet to be tallied are from heavily Democratic voting blocks, only expected to bolster Joe Biden's lead. This is a vastly different picture than what we saw back in 2016 when Trump took this state by a razor-thin margin. Tonight, it's just another brick in the blue wall for Joe Biden. Meanwhile, poll watchers doing all they can to make sure every vote counts. Lester?
Steve Patterson tonight, thank you. And also breaking this evening, NBC News has projected Biden as the apparent winner in Wisconsin, another very close race. Trump campaign says it will demand a recount there. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez is there.
Tonight, new questions about how pollsters were so off again.
I want to know who they're polling.
Trump supporter Anna Primus wasn't surprised.
I think I'm a quiet majority. Maybe we keep our opinions more to ourselves.
Before the election, polls had President Trump down significantly in Wisconsin, some by double digits. So what happened?
I think there's a hidden Trump voter. And I think that some people are just scared to really come out and support the president.
So I think that the credibility of the polling industry is very much at risk right now. And I think it's going to take a very, very long time for people to trust the polls ever again.
Biden supporters were swayed in part by the raging pandemic here. Today, the state once again broke its daily record for new COVID cases.
I worry that if something doesn't change soon, we're going to have a lot more people die.
How would you say the president has handled the pandemic?
Honestly, I don't think that anybody could have done anything different.
Michael Barnes also liked the president's law and order message.
I think it's really important all the police unions in this whole country endorse Donald Trump because all the Democrats are trying to slash the budgets like crazy.
The state ended up splitting down the middle.
I do think that Wisconsin is in many ways a microcosm, including our divisions, the division between urban and rural, between red and blue. You see how deeply segregated this state is. And I think in the results, you see how divided Wisconsin is, you see how divided America is. And after this election, there's no indication that we're going to be less divided.
So Gabe joins us now. What would a recount look like? What's the timeline we're talking about here?
Well, Lester, the Trump campaign can officially ask for one after the counties certify the results. That could take at least a week. Election officials would then have 13 days to conduct the recount. So this all might not be finished here in Wisconsin until much later this month, Lester.
Gabe Gutierrez tonight, thank you. And these late developments in Wisconsin and Michigan, not good news for President Trump, who is turning to legal challenges tonight. Let's get more on the Trump campaign from NBC's Hallie Jackson.
A blow for President Trump tonight, with part of that blue wall building back for Joe Biden in Michigan and apparently Wisconsin. Now, the president's biggest battlegrounds, the courtrooms in the states that will decide the presidential race. His campaign threatening a recount in Wisconsin and filing new lawsuits in Michigan and Pennsylvania to stop ballot counting. Despite what the president's son now says,
we're going to win Pennsylvania, but they're trying to cheat us out of it because they know it's their only path to victory.
there's no evidence of fraud in states that have not been called. The president's legal battle beginning as his path to victory is narrowing, even as he tries to prematurely claim states he'd like to win, like Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, all races too early to call, with many ballots yet to be tallied. Same goes for Arizona. His campaign confident there anyway. And while his advisors insist that outstanding vote could turn the tide, the president insists incorrectly there's something wrong with it. Tweeting, they are finding Biden votes all over the place with, quote, surprise ballot dumps leading to his support magically disappearing. To be clear, votes are not being found or surprisingly dumped or disappearing. They're being counted legally and legitimately. But it's part of the president's misinformation campaign intended to introduce uncertainty in a process that so far has unfolded as expected. Warnings now from social media companies slapping labels on his tweets, and warnings even from the president's own allies about his false claim of victory overnight.
A very sad group of people is trying to disenfranchise that group of people, and we won't stand for it. This is a major fraud in our nation. Frankly, we did win this election.
None of that was true when the president said it, and it's not true now.
I was very distressed by what I heard the president say.
It's a bad strategic decision. It's a bad political decision.
Still, President Trump's election day showing stronger than many polls predicted as he overperformed with Black and Latino voters. Overall, hardly the repudiation of Trumpism his critics had hoped for. The president's hold on his own party undeniable, even with his hold on the White House uncertain.
And Hallie, one of the takeaways from all this is the intense interest in this presidential race and the turnouts, the people who stood in line to vote.
Yeah, and listen, Lester, we're now getting a sense of just how big that turnout was. Our NBC News projections suggest it is the highest voter turnout rate in more than a century. We're talking an estimated 160+ million people casting ballots overall. Now, the Trump campaign had really been focusing on turnout. They had that get out the vote operation that kept going even during the pandemic, those rallies they kept holding, looking to register more and more voters who attended. And while advisors tonight say they do still think there's a narrow path to a win, it's the Biden campaign sitting in a more comfortable position. And Lester, if that holds, President Trump would become the first incumbent president to lose re-election in nearly 3 decades. Lester.
All right, Hallie Jackson tonight, thank you. And for his part, Joe Biden and his campaign projecting optimism tonight as the results unfold and what potentially looks like a blue wall begins to emerge. We get more on that from NBC's Kristen Welker.
Joe Biden tonight aiming to project confidence that he is going to win the White House.
I'm not here to declare that we've won, but I am here to report when the count is finished, we believe we will be the winners.
Emboldened after starting to build back the blue wall, those critical Midwestern states that President Trump won in 2016. Tonight, NBC News projecting Biden is the apparent winner of Wisconsin and the winner of Michigan, and Biden touting the popular vote.
Senator Harris and I are on track to win more votes than any ticket in the history of this country.
Biden also taking a not-so-veiled swipe at President Trump, who falsely claimed he won overnight with millions of votes yet to be counted.
Now, every vote must be counted. No one's going to take our democracy away from us. Not now, not ever. We, the people, will not be bullied. We, the people, will not surrender. My friends, I'm confident we'll emerge victorious.
But earlier in the day, the Biden campaign's own legal advisor declared the race is already over. Quote, "We're winning the election. We've won the election, and we're going to defend that election." At the root of the campaign's optimism about its path to 270 electoral votes, Biden's slim leads in Nevada and Arizona, which would lessen Biden's reliance on winning Pennsylvania, where President Trump is currently leading, and Wisconsin is likely headed for a recount. Meanwhile, inside the Democratic Party, the soul-searching has also started, with Biden showing against the president in many battleground states far weaker than many Democrats had expected, including failing to flip Florida, despite numerous trips by Biden and former President Obama, and underperforming among Latinos. Biden vowing if he does win, a top priority will be trying to unify a deeply divided nation.
There will be no blue states and red states when we win. Just the United States of America.
And Kristen, the Biden team now gearing up for a legal fight tonight.
That's right, Lester. The Biden campaign is striking a defiant note amidst these legal challenges from the Trump campaign, calling them charades and pathetic, and saying they have a team of lawyers ready to fight back, even fundraising off of the matter, as is the Trump campaign. And with this race still undecided, the Biden campaign has launched its transition website tonight. Lester.
Kristen Welker this evening, thank you. Still a long way to go in Pennsylvania. That's a state the president is counting on to put him over the top. And not surprisingly, that state's taken a long time to count its votes. NBC's Stephanie Gosk is there with late details.
In Pennsylvania, they keep counting and counting hundreds of thousands of mail-in ballots.
I know it's tough for people to wait, and people are frustrated by the wait, but that is currently the situation we are in. I would ask that people be patient.
The largest number of untallied votes remains piled up in and around the state's biggest cities, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. Statewide, 2.6 million votes were received in the mail, an unprecedented number. And by law, the counting could not begin until Election Day.
Counting votes cast by mail, if you're going to do it right and you're going to do it accurately, because there's no other choice, takes a little bit of time.
Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf anticipated the timing, even running an ad in the build-up to the election.
Counting that tremendous number of ballots will take more time than we're used to. We may not know the results today.
Today, he looked to reassure the country.
I will do everything within my power to ensure that the results are fair and that every vote is counted.
President Trump's numbers were strong on Tuesday, especially in rural counties. The mail-in vote has so far favored Joe Biden, but there is a lot of ground for him to make up.
Mail-in votes are still coming in. They'll be accepted until Friday at 5 p.m. as long as they were mailed on or before Election Day. Lester?
All right, Stephanie Goss tonight, thanks very much. With the election this close, could there be another Bush v. Gore with the Supreme Court deciding who won? Pete Williams is following the latest legal challenges and joins us now. Pete?
Lester, of all the lawsuits now popping up in at least 3 states, the one that could drag the Supreme Court into the election is already sitting on the court's doorstep. It's a challenge to a Pennsylvania court's order issued in September that extended the deadline for mail ballots until this Friday. Republicans say that order was invalid. They say only the state legislature can change election rules. And at least 3 Supreme Court justices and possibly 4 have indicated they agree with that claim. If it turns out that the outcome of the election could depend on the mail ballots that arrive today through Friday, then the Republicans will likely ask the Supreme Court to hear their appeal and act quickly. And this time, Justice Amy Coney Barrett would be able to participate in the court's decision on what to do about that. Also late today, the Trump campaign asked for permission to become part of that lawsuit. That would add to its potential importance. And the Republicans also have lawsuits going in Michigan and Nevada. Lester?
All right, Peter Williams, thanks. The president's handling of the COVID pandemic was a top election issue, and tonight the stark reality that some areas are seeing their highest levels of infection, with cases climbing in most states now. Here's NBC's national correspondent, Miguel Almaguer.
In battleground states like Arizona, Wisconsin, and Texas, COVID was top of mind for many Americans this election, but it's front and center every day for doctors like Jason Mitchell.
This is the highest volumes that we've seen throughout this pandemic.
As many focus on election results, tonight first responders are still struggling to save lives, with COVID cases climbing in 43 states.
We cannot afford to lose any more lives.
Colorado is now accepting patients from outside its borders, but like other regions, they too are facing a 100% spike in new cases. Though the mortality rate has improved, the volume in cases is accounting for an increase in deaths in 32 states.
And now, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, child COVID cases hit their highest one-week mark since the start of the pandemic, though fatalities are rare.
But the virus is still devastating. Jennifer Silik-Padana lost her parents in April. Married nearly 50 years, they died within days of one another.
It is a pain that I can't even begin to describe because there are a lot of days that it doesn't seem real.
Tonight, for so many Americans, well after the election ends, the toll of the virus will still be felt. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News.
In just 60 seconds, a federal judge lashes out at the Postal Service for defying his order to search for undelivered ballots as mail processing rates fall on Election Day. And presidential historian Michael Beschloss gives us his take on this momentous election. We're keeping an eye on some of the first large protests in the wake of the election. In New York City, protesters taking to the streets right now demanding that every vote be counted nationwide. New York, one of the many cities from coast to coast where businesses have been boarded up ahead of the potential for unrest. Back now with a federal judge demanding the Postal Service explain why it didn't comply with his order on Election Day to sweep hundreds of post offices for lost mail-in ballots.
72% in Greensboro, North Carolina. Today, an angry federal judge demanded to know why the Postal Service had not obeyed his order issued yesterday to immediately sweep hundreds of postal facilities for 300,000 mail-in ballots that the agency said it had not processed. Judge Emmett Sullivan threatened to order President Trump's new Postmaster General to appear in court himself. The Postal Service said it had not complied with the order because postal inspectors were already conducting sweeps. Then today it announced these ballots were delivered in advance of the election deadlines. But because they went directly to election boards, the ballots bypassed the scanning process. For months, the post office has been accused of purposely slowing mail delivery in the run-up to the election.
We live in the United States, not a banana republic, and a federal judge order should mandate certain actions. It is not something that's discretionary.
Undelivered ballots could make a difference in states like Arizona, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Michigan, where they had to arrive by last night. Meanwhile, the counting continues tonight. Pennsylvania will count ballots if they arrive by 5 p.m. Friday and were sent on time. A recount is mandatory if the margin between candidates is 0.5% or less. President Trump has already requested between candidates is 0.5% or less. President Trump has already requested a recount in Wisconsin, which requires a margin of 1% or less. Arizona requires a recount if the margin is less than or equal to 0.1%. Michigan requires a recount if the margin is 2,000 votes or less. Republican election legal analyst Matt Sanderson says recounts are normal and do not suggest cheating.
This may take a little bit longer than everyone would like it to, but remember, a slow process is a careful process. It's not a fraudulent process.
159 million people voted in this election, in person and by mail. 66% of voters cast a ballot. That's the highest rate in a century. Lester?
Tom, thanks. And we've seen record turnout in this election, nearly 160 million Americans. And in battlegrounds, especially black and Latino voters appear to be making a big difference. More on that beginning with Kerry Sanders in Florida.
President Trump's supporters in Miami's Little Havana celebrating after the president snagged an even bigger win in Florida than in 2016, largely thanks to strong support among Latinos, nearly doubling his vote totals in heavily Cuban-American Miami-Dade County.
Joe Biden es el candidato del castrochavismo.
Trump's campaign effectively likening Biden to Cuba's Fidel Castro and Venezuela's Hugo Chavez.
Our ancestors fled communist regimes, so we were not going to take any of the lies that Biden and his party were offering.
I think the two words socialism and communism in the Hispanic community mean the same thing. It's frightening, it's dictatorial, and it cost Biden.
Political consultants say the Biden campaign should have more effectively disputed that socialist label.
Is there a lesson to future candidates about the Latin vote?
I feel like the Biden campaign did what they needed to do at the bare minimum. These community groups in Florida told me they had more money than they had ever dealt with, but they got it all in the last 3 weeks. That's the problem.
Too late.
Too late.
Joe Biden underperforming in other states too, like Texas, where in the largest Hispanic county, he won by just 5 points. Hillary Clinton had won by 60. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeting, the results sound the alarm about Democratic vulnerabilities with Latinos, and that effort hasn't been put in. Tonight, a warning to all politicians, ignore the Latino vote at your own peril. Kerry Sanders, NBC News in Miami's Little Havana.
I'm Blaine Alexander in Georgia, where at least 200,000 votes are still outstanding.
Is this taking longer than you expected to take, and why?
Oh, no, it's really going much quicker. Every legal vote will be counted.
The Secretary of State says all hands are on deck to finish counting as early as tonight. The two counties with the most remaining still tallying votes, Fulton and DeKalb counties in metro Atlanta, a growing blue spot in a once reliably red southern state.
We are looking at two of the largest counties in the state. There also happen to be two of the blackest counties in the state of Georgia.
And the vast majority of black voters statewide back Biden, 87% compared to Trump's 11% in Georgia's exit polls. Democrats benefiting from the state's shifting demographics, where population has grown by more than 1 million over the last decade, a large percentage people of color.
But I wanted to make sure that my vote counted, and that is why I'm here.
Insay Ufat's organization, the New Georgia Project, works to get them politically engaged.
We can demystify how campaigns work, demystify how government works, and make it accessible to all.
They've registered nearly 500,000 new voters since 2014.
So like in terms of politics, like the idea that there are no safe seats is now our reality, and that people are having to work for it.
The question now, whose work paid off? Blaine Alexander, NBC News, Atlanta.
As we await the final results, we can all agree this has been an election unlike any other. We want to turn to NBC News presidential historian Michael Beschloss. Michael, try to put some perspective in all this for us.
Well, you know, Lester, we've had something we have never seen before, which is a president last night claiming re-election even before that re-election is anywhere near to being certified. But, you know, people who were saying that it is unusual for us to take so long to count the ballots, most of American history that's happened. 19th century, for much of that time, an election would take days because, especially before the telegraph, it took a long time for word to spread that someone had won. 1876, there was a conflict between Hayes and Tilden. Took over 3 months to resolve until finally it was decided that Rutherford Hayes would be president. And of course, many of us remember 2000 when George W. Bush was finally declared the winner of that election by a vote of the Supreme Court. So I think anyone who says that there's anything that is out of keeping with democracy about this is looking at it the wrong way, because what history tells us is the most important thing is for the counting of the ballots, not necessarily to be fast, but for it to be accurate. Our democracy depends on it. And the other thing about yesterday, huge turnout. That's a big symbol of health in a democracy.
All right. Michael, thanks very much. Amazing how things can look different when we look through the lens of history and take a step back. Well, that's Nightly News for this Wednesday. I'm Lester Holt. For many of you, we'll be continuing our election coverage at the top of the hour, so we hope you can stay with us for that. Good night.
This is NBC Nightly News, Decision 2020. Here is Lester Holt.
Good evening once again from our NBC News election headquarters as we follow this election cliffhanger minute by minute. NBC News now projecting that Joe Biden has won the crucial state of Michigan and that Biden is the apparent winner in Wisconsin. President Trump won both of those states 4 years ago, but this election is still far from over, and we have it all covered for you tonight. Let's go to our political director, Chuck Todd. Chuck, what's the latest here?
All right, Lester, let's go through. First, I want to remind people what we could learn tonight, right? Think about today. Today we got Michigan.
As all this news is coming in, most of it not seeming all that great for President Trump. Dana, you have some new reporting.
I talked to a source familiar with President Trump's thinking who said that the president is down.
obviously tired, which is understandable, but not feeling all that great, despite the public bluster that we've seen and heard from his campaign, from his children, that the president is seeing what's happening. He is seeing that in some of these key states that will determine whether he is president or not, his lead is shrinking. Or if Joe Biden is ahead, you know, notwithstanding what we just saw, this is before that just happened, it's just not looking that good for the president. And the sense from the source that I spoke to is that the president is starting to see this slip away. That's the mood of the president. Now, could that change like this with changes in the votes? Of course. But it also kind of dovetails with some reporting that we had earlier from our colleague Kevin Liptak, who said the president is calling to allies, saying that he doesn't understand the strategy that his campaign is using to kind of have these lawsuits in various states. Why didn't they try this more aggressively before the votes were counted? So there's some hand-wringing going on behind the scenes while there is some, you know, public bravado. Yeah. It's quite different.
And I don't blame him for being confused about his legal team's strategy, because it is a little confounding when you actually look at what is going on. We've been talking all night about the way in which the strategy is talking out of one side of their mouth in Arizona and in Nevada, and then out of another in Pennsylvania and Georgia and Michigan. So it is confusing. And earlier in the year, the president really did push his team and the RNC to have a very aggressive legal strategy. And I think he really had hoped that a lot of this stuff would be resolved before we got to this point. And much of it actually had been resolved and litigated in the courts, which is why you're seeing some of the legal challenges that they're putting out now are, as we've discussed, fairly thin. And so I'm not surprised to see that the president finds it to be a somewhat unconvincing case.
But do you think
that
his issue is that he's not finding their legal strategy now to be up to the standards that he wants, or he doesn't understand why they're not able to stop the counting of votes? I mean, that seems more like in keeping with Donald Trump. His legal team was fairly aggressively out there. Yeah. I mean, they were trying to stop mail-in ballots in any number of states, including the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I mean, the problem is that just because he's president, he's not able just to stop mail-in ballots. He's not able just to stop the counting of ballots. I think, with all due respect, I think you're giving him a little bit too much credit.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's a little bit of both, that he wants to stop the ballots from being counted. But again, I'm sure he's not blind to the fact that these cases that are being brought are long shots.
Exactly.
I mean, they're just hard to...
But that's not his legal team's fault.
Well, no, it's not. But as we've been saying all night, they are throwing everything they can up against this wall. The president obviously wants to win. He wants the ballots to perhaps not be counted. But I think he, as someone who, as you pointed out, is very litigious, he understands that these cases are not as rock solid as he.
That's exactly right. I think that he's.
Hey everyone, this is Josh with Josh Wright Piano TV. Today we'll be doing a video segment on pearly sound. This concept was presented to me by my teacher, by other people. It really came when I was listening to the works of Murray Pariah, as he's played a lot of Bach, Mozart, Chopin, Beethoven. All those different composers present a lot of passages that require, I guess, a really light touch. What we want to do today is to go over some concepts about how we can create a pearly, light, clear, beautiful, fleeting sound. I think that's a big problem for a lot of people, is the tone quality suffers when we're caught up with technique. So how can we make both coincide? This video is in response to Carrie, who had asked specifically about the Chopin Nocturne in D-flat major, Opus 27, number 2. And anyone wanting to hear that piece, I would definitely listen to a lot of different recordings of it. I've actually recorded it. You can check it out on my website at joshwrightpiano.com. And the passage that he was asking about is the really quick passage after the final recap of the theme. And I'm just going to go ahead and play this a little bit under tempo. to start out with so we can kind of hear what we're looking at. So that passage, there's a lot of notes going on for this left hand, which actually in full tempo is more along these lines. So I'm going to go ahead and play at full tempo now. So. So how do we get kind of that lighter touch and fast fleeting notes without being heavy? I remember this is kind of how I used to play. I used to play really a little bit more connected and a little bit more heavy and muddy. I was trying to get it lighter, but I didn't know how. So it was more like, you know, and the fingers are definitely not nearly as clear. So what we want to do is, how do we get that nice pearly sound like that? I think the answer really came from me.
Зачем перебираешь ты меня, он тебя понял? Наоборот, ничего. Никому это не надо. Не, ну да.